Just a minute and we'll just get started. We are live on social media also. So friends who are joining on Zoom or those who are watching online, in case if you have any question to any specific set of speakers, you can ask in the comments. We'll just, towards the second half of the session, we'll ask those questions to our panelists. Okay, so it's 3 p.m. Idea is to start on time, finish on time. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. I'm Jatin. I'm one of the co-founder of eChai Network. So eChai Network and Vadhwani Foundations have together organized this CoRise Summit. So this is our first session for that. So thank you so much, all the participants for joining and all the speakers who are joining in. So FinTech is the flavor of the season. It is going to remain the same. So we thought, okay, we will get started with our FinTech program. It's a panel discussion. We have very prominent speakers from all over the world who have joined in. So basic format, I'll just explain, and then Aditi will be moderating this session. So Aditi will take it over. So we are using Zoom webinar. And so some of you would be live on Zoom and some of you will be watching this video either live or probably when the session gets over and you are watching this video. In case if you have any questions, you can ask in the chat. We'll take up those questions and we will continue having our discussion. So thank you so much everyone for joining in. You can use the hashtag CoRise Summit and wherever social media you are active on, you'll find a lot of other good content. And if you go to CoRiseSummit.com, you'll be able to discover a lot of other startups and a lot of other tracks. We are making it live on YouTube. So either you can join the Zoom calls or just watch it on the YouTube and you can engage with a lot of other startups who are featured on the website. So a lot of basic announcements about the summit. And so probably this particular summit is not a huge summit, but it is like our boutique summit. We have a certain style and flavor and we would like to keep it that way. So with this, thank you so much everyone again. And Aditi from who is part of the growth team at FamPay, stage is yours, Aditi. In Zoom, the screen is yours now. We get started. Yes, Aditi.
Thank you so much, Jatin, for the wonderful start of the program. Hello, everybody. This is Aditi here, and I lead growth at FamPay, which is the first platform for payments ecosystem platform for teenagers in India. And it's wonderful to be here out today discussing FinTech, which rightly, as Jatin mentioned, is the flavor of the season. And I don't think any other field has seen as many innovations, as many controversies, and as many developments happening as FinTech has. And it's not just about FinTech anymore. Like someone rightly mentioned, every industry, every business out there is a FinTech business if you look about it. If it involves money, if it involves any transactions, then it is FinTech. And it's a very, very prominent part of all the entrepreneurship, all of the businesses that are happening around the world. So that's where we find value in it. And I'm very, very happy to welcome you all to this session and our esteemed panelists here who will be throwing light on important aspects of their journeys and about the ideas that they have so beautifully flourished over time. A little brief about me. I am Aditi. I work with the growth team at FamPay, which I just as mentioned is first payments platform for teenagers in India, about 250 million of them. And given that we have very traditional banking systems for that particular age group, it's a fresh breath of air that we're trying to bring in from them. And before that, I have worked with Carva, which is an instant salary lending disbursement service, where we were trying to weigh the 30-day pay cycle which exists in India and has kind of been picked up in other parts of the world. So that's about me. That's my work experience in FinTech. And I've also worked with Cornell University in Chicago Booth School of Business before my stints with startups. And there my research were involved with different aspects of financial ecosystems and behavioral economics. Now, without a further ado, we will start with brief introductions of our panelists today. We have Kunal from MoneyTap, we have Anurag from KredX, we have Caroline from Lifetise, we have Ketevan who is from TWINO, and we have Chirutha from Pay1. So we will start with Ketevan and let's hear about a brief about her. Ketevan?
Hello, hi everyone. Enchanted to be a part of this event. I'm Ketevan from fintech company TWINO. TWINO is a Latvian company that has a very reputable business operations in Europe and Asian countries. It's one of the largest European P2P lending platform. We already reached the milestone and disbursed 1 billion euros in consumer loans. Obviously, I'm responsible for development of the region of Asia. Currently, we started running our P2P lending operations in Vietnam, and we have other countries in the list to expand our business. Today, of course, I will be giving some insights and some recommendations for fintech startups who are eager to enter their first footsteps into this agile world, and I will be eager to answer all of your questions. To briefly outline my background, I'm a PhD in marketing. I've graduated from Georgian business schools, French and UK. I have done my PhD in UK. And I have a 15 years of work experience in business and marketing. I'm quite happy to be now participant of development of FinTech industry.
That's wonderful. We are very glad to have you with us here, Ketevan. Moving on to Kunal from MoneyTap. Kunal,
Hi. Hi. So just to introduce myself very briefly, I'm one of the founders of MoneyTap. MoneyTap is essentially Asia's first app-based credit line. We're solving a simple problem of providing credit to individuals across Asia, and we started out with India. The objective is to provide credit in an affordable and a flexible manner through the convenience of a smartphone. And hence we have an app-based, mobile app-based credit line product. So customers can avail unsecured credit in the form of a credit line or a term loan. And we also have our own co-branded credit cards in the market. We are probably, as far as digital consumer lending fintechs in India goes, we're probably the one with the largest loan disbursals right now. We've been growing quite a lot, I think, over the years, more than 400% year on year, as last year's performance was. And I think we're solving the problem using a lot of, I would say, machine learning and artificial intelligence as far as our credit underwriting and strategies are concerned. So that's a quick background about MoneyTap. I have been an entrepreneur now for a little over a decade. I've done a few startups, started business, built them up profitably, exited. And before that, I worked for a long period of time in semiconductors doing product development, based out of India, but done a lot of work across India, France, and a little bit in the US. An engineer by profession, but now pretty much a businessman. So that's quickly about me.
That's wonderful. Lovely to have you here, Kunal. Moving on to Caroline from Lifetise. Caroline?
Thanks, Aditi. Hi, everyone. So I'm Caroline Hughes. I'm co-founder and CEO of Lifetise. And our mission is to help people work out how to afford their lives. So whatever you want your life to look like, whether that's buying a home, raising a family, every life decision from leaving school through to retirement, we show you how to afford it and all of the steps that you need to take to get there. So we're somewhat unique in that we are trying to tackle people's whole lives, which is an enormous undertaking. And we very much position ourselves within the fintech ecosystem as connecting our consumers with other fintechs. So we are not just in the market for ourselves, but given that one of the challenges that other fintechs face is customer acquisition, we act as that connector. So we help consumers understand what fintech products would be helpful to them at different points in their lives to solve specific problems. Thanks.
That's lovely to know about. Let's move on to Anurag from KredX.
Hey, thanks, Aditi. It's a pleasure to be here. And hello, everyone. I'm Anurag Jain, and I'm one of the founders of a company called KredX. It's a fintech company operating in the field of online invoice discounting. So we are one of the leading online discounting players in India, with in existence, for the last 5 years running now. So what we do is essentially we are helping vendors of large corporates to basically sell their invoices on the platform to a network of investors on the other side. So at the end of the day, the vendors are able to encash their invoices that are left unpaid or are sitting in their the books, and the investors are able to get better yields on their investment, which they won't get otherwise through different other investments. So that's what we do. We are sort of currently, from a business perspective, operating in almost 120 cities in India. And so that's a bit from the company's perspective. From my perspective, I'm a BTech from an engineering college called IIT Kanpur. For those of you who are not aware of it, it's one of the leading engineering colleges in India. And after that, I started my career on the technology side. So I spent half of my career on the technology side, and the other half sort of on the finance and banking side, and with a little bit of experience on running my father's business before jumping into starting KredX. So that's about me, and happy to be here and looking forward to the discussion. Yep.
That's wonderful. So our final panelist for the session today is Chirutha from Pay1. Let's hear it from her.
Hi, Aditi. Thanks. So I'm Chirutha, and I am one of the co-founders of Pay1. And Pay1 is a retail tech platform, and we provide digital and financial services like basic banking, insurance, micro insurance, digital payments, cash collection points to merchants. Merchants are basically the mom and pop stores that are there in our country, India. And so what we actually try to do is we enable these merchants with all the services. So the consumer, say the Bharat consumer, okay, the tier 2, tier 3, they can actually go and use digital services um, and access the services through our merchant. So that's what we deliver. We have our presence all over India. We have around 25,000 plus active merchants all over India. And so that's what we do at Pay1. And a brief introduction about me, I have been more into UI UX background. That's how I've come from. And my expertise has always been lying in cross-functional and single discipline teams with a deadline driven projects. So that's what I have been that's how I've been working on actually. So that's it, Aditi. Over to you.
That's wonderful. So we have a very diverse and esteemed panel here, and I would request everyone to bombard us with questions so that we can keep up, a very lively and a very interesting Q&A round after our discussion. So as someone asked in the chat box, what really is the theme? The theme is FinTech, finance technology, and financial services is one industry, and this is a subgroup of it. Now that technology is very strongly aiding how we actually transact, and with the advent of online transactions, digital payments, all of that, it has become one of the very core industries that's seeing prominent growth in these current times. Now, starting with our first round of questions. So the format will be, for the first few questions, we will be taking answers from all the panelists here, and then going forward, we will be taking up individual questions, which I have for some of the panelists here, depending on their areas of expertise and the idea domains that they come from. So my first question here for all the panelists is to discuss about the insights and the challenges that made them come up with the idea that they have built so far, so forth, and what was their inspiration to bring this thing up. What were the challenges? What were the certain insights? And this is very important for any budding entrepreneur or even people in the practice of the area to understand how does the process of building something really comes about. So we're going to start with Kunal on this one.
Okay. Hey, thanks for the question, Aditi. Very relevant question, and it's very tempting to have a very long answer where I could go on talking a lot about all my problems and all the challenges that I faced while starting up. But let me try to compress and make it a little bit more concise and effective for everybody. So if I, to answer the specific question, like what prompted me to go after this problem, or why did we get started, and how, what are we focusing on? As an organization, today we are doing something that was the same problem that we thought about solving even before we started the company. Now, this doesn't often happen. Like, one starts with an idea, and then over a period of time, as you implement that idea into a plan, and then to take that plan into execution, things evolve a lot, because when you face reality, things change on the ground. But we started with a simple problem, and that problem was that if you look at a country and an emerging market like India, people need money for different purposes in life. It's not just for buying a house or buying, let's say, a car, which could be an expensive use case, but it could also be for smaller use cases like medical emergencies, day-to-day needs, some purchases, travel, or sometimes they're just running out of cash for something or the other. And this is a very fundamental need. And we realized that while India has a large number of banks, this problem was not getting solved for people in an affordable and a flexible manner, which provided the flexibility to individuals like perhaps you and I. And banks had a certain set of rules saying that, hey, this is how you will be able to get credit from me as a bank. So either you take it or you leave it. So we decided to turn the problem on its head. And we put the customer first and said, look, if I think about it from a customer standpoint, how can I solve this problem better? And that was the genesis of the problem. And then we looked at the problem in the context of actually running a business around it. So it has to be, for us, it had to make sense. It had to have scale. I think the founders have been entrepreneurs in the past. I've been an entrepreneur in the past as well. So we were excited to solve something which was big at scale, and it had to make economic sense. So we cannot build a business purely on just doing some transactions where you do not have any margin and you do not make any money. There are startups which may be focusing only on those metrics, but you really can't build a long-term sustainable business if there are no profits. So with all of this in mind, we started the business out, and I would say that learning has been the most fundamental learning, and that's what I would pass on to anybody else, saying, if you're looking at solving a problem, then you have to figure out, if that problem is really worth solving at large scale, and if you'd really be passionate about solving that problem on an ongoing basis. I think I understand how the markets work in different countries in Europe and US, in Southeast Asia, Middle East, but I know the most about India. So I can say this with confidence that because financial services is regulated, there is a lot of challenge in executing the business within the bounds of compliance and legalities. You have to follow certain processes, and the regulator is closely watching you. So this is not an easy business to do. So it's not for the faint-hearted, let me just say. And particularly credit and loans, like I heard other people, like I think Anurag was talking about it and Ketevan was talking about it, that everybody is disbursed loans. So giving loans is very easy, collecting money back is very tough. So it is not for the faint-hearted. Definitely requires a lot of discipline. So I would say if you're committed to the problem you're solving, you are not afraid of solving a big and a difficult problem. And I think you don't have problems sleeping as an individual in spite of stress, then I think you should go for it. I sleep like a baby, so I don't have a problem in spite of my stressful days. But I think that's the key learning. So I'll pause now. I hopefully have answered the question. I'll let others pitch in.
Yes, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. I think I completely agree. When at Karma we were working on the instant salary idea, we realized that there are these big educational, medical needs, all of which a lot of other banks are taking care of. But there were small needs, as small as getting a bike repaired. And people who were living on hand-to-mouth basis, which are a lot in India, they were actually entangled in massive credit cycles and debt cycles just to, go out and about solving that one small need, which was actually doable if there was a personal credit line. So I think kudos to you for working on that. Let's next move to Caroline. understanding what are the insights and challenges she's had so far building Lifetise.
So ours have been really interesting. We are building consumer fintech, and one of the challenges for us is that the UK is a relatively small market compared to what you're dealing with and compared to the US, for example. So one of the things that we have is, we're targeting 14 million customers in the UK aged between 25 to 40. And that is a great challenge to have for a few years. And then very quickly, we have to think about how do we scale what we're building to other territories. So one of the things that we've been looking at is we're solving for specific problems. We're solving for how do I afford my life where certain conditions have become harder. So where if you go to university, you have student debt. If house prices have become too high compared to the average person's wages. And so when we look at what we're building, we're trying to solve for very, very real life problems. And of course, those types of problems change depending on which territory you're working in. So we started with the UK. Kunal, as you said, many markets, but India is the one the best. Same for me with the UK. We're looking at how do we solve for the UK, and then which of these problems that we're solving for are also replicable in different markets, and what do we have to do differently for specific markets globally that are not quite the same as UK. And some of those things are systemic, some of those things are cultural. So when I look at our journey for the next sort of 5 years into the future, that's the bit that's going to be most interesting for me, taking what we've learned in the UK and then turning that into something that works in individual markets. So for example, one of the markets where we're less likely to succeed, and I've had to identify that early, is in Scandinavian countries, because they have a very strong social welfare system. So they control house prices. You don't have to pay for medical bills. So there's a lot of challenges that we would see in the UK and the US that simply don't exist there. So when I look at what we're going to scale, I have to identify which are the territories that make the most sense for us based on what we've already built, and where are there opportunities for us to do something different, because there are very specific challenges facing the populations in those countries. So yeah, that's the kind of learnings that we're taking away at this point.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense when it comes to, building and moving and helping people move towards their goals. I mean, goal building is one of those areas in FinTech which hasn't really been tapped as much. At least that's what the perspective I have, at least in India. And I think just having people see that particular benchmark and where they are to reach and certain advices onto the journey is a very, very important thing, especially for millennials, as you mentioned, and from what I see, even more so for the Gen Zs. They are the instant gratification crowd, and that eighth sector, which is now growing up, is really looking forward, for those advisors onto achieving their goals from a very early age, and they are very serious about it. So that's one very, very important thing there. Moving on to Anurag, let's get to know about the insights and challenges Anurag has been able to.
So yeah, in fact, adding on to what Kunal and Caroline just mentioned, so every startup goes through their set of problems and ideas from which the whole thing sort of got conceptualized. So the same thing happened for us as well when we started, and so there's one more founder with me at KredX, Manish. So when we started discussing around the problems that the SMEs are facing on a day-to-day basis, there were basically two things that sort of emerged out of our research and whatever we studied in the market. One was that India is a developing country, right? So if you're growing at a 5+% GDP growth rate year over year for the last couple of years. So there is definitely a lot of demand for credit. So everybody needs money to grow their business, to expand their horizons, geographies, and the products that they are into. While on the other side, if you look at the savings rate in India, it is again one of the highest across the globe. So there's a lot of money stashed in low yielding deposits, saving account, fixed deposits, and so on and so forth, which are low yielding instruments for the consumers. So the first thing that came to our mind was, so at one place you're seeing that SMEs are struggling with their day-to-day working capital requirements. Nobody is ready to give them, provide them money for host of different reasons. On the other side, you have a lot of money which is lying, which has not been deployed for different reasons again. So if we are able to build a bridge to connect these two sides, and mind you, it has to be a trusted bridge, because that is where the problem comes in, because not everybody is, everybody can see that gap, but there's nobody who's like trying to build that bridge. So if you're able to build that bridge, there is a potential to really build a very, very scalable company, as well as trying to solve a problem that exists on both the sides. So for us, it being a marketplace, we're trying to solve the problem on both the sides. On one side, we're trying to cater to the working capital requirements of SMEs, of large corporates primarily. And on the other side, we are also looking at providing better yield and better returns to our investors who are willing to buy those invoices that are being raised by these SMEs to the large corporates. So that is how it started. And obviously, we are sort of a much bigger and much broader company in terms of the product suite that we have as of now. But that is where the idea actually started. And we got together, we started building our solution around it. And over a period of time, we have actually evolved as a company, not because we've built tons of features in our product, but because we've spoken to a lot of consumers, a lot of end customers, and then we have sort of modified our offering accordingly. So I think that is also very, very critical. A lot of startups, what they do is they come up with a very fancy product, thinking that this is something that the customers will require. But at the end of the day, I think that the formula for that is that you should go with a minimum viable product or a basic product, hit the market, collect the feedback, and then try and make the best possible version of that product that you are offering to serve to the customers. So I think that will save a lot of work, that will save a lot of effort from your side, and you will have a much, much faster go to the market.
Absolutely. I think that feedback loop is extremely important when you're building some product which is catering the masses. I think that also calls out to the new approach that we're seeing when it comes to user acquisition, which is the entire community approach. And people actually, the users, the builders, the consumers, all of them coming together and building something. So that is a fantastic approach. And I see a lot of potential, the way you're mentioning it, right? When it comes to being an MVP and then finding a product market fit for that particular thing and then iterating over it. So that's a lot of value. And let's get to know of some more very valuable insights from Ketevan, understanding how they have built and swarmed off through the P2P marketplaces.
Thank you. Very nice insights from colleagues from other regions. I would like to strengthen out the importance how actually fintech evolved and what is the main difference between traditional banking services and fintech, because fintech have recently transformed the way we engage with our finances and changed how we manage our own money. And it arises from the customers that needed these simplified and accessible services from financial companies, and actually enabling these individuals to obtain loans directly from another individuals. And that's the need of simplified lending possibilities gave birth to online consumer loans, P2P lending platforms, and etc. Where actually my colleagues already outlined how it is important. And of course, everyone needs money without doubt. But what is the main difference between the traditional banking services and a fintech is that fintech is heavily deploying state-of-art risk management systems. And as Kunal already identified, it's very easy to disburse money, but getting back, it's very hard and it's the most challenging. That's why fintech startups need to heavily put their effort and energy in technologies, which is enabling these companies within a couple of seconds assess the credibility of the borrowers and minimize the risk of the default of the lender. Because in this business, everything matters around the default rate. And of course, no matter how great is your idea or how scalable, maybe you can find in a marvelous region to serve those needs. But at the end of the day, we are not counting like how much money it has been disbursed, but actually like what's the default rate. And that's why fintech companies are heavily depending on a machine learning systems, which are like artificial intelligences, predictive analytics, data science, because those are simplifying the decision-making skills. And when you are integrating technologies in risk management, it's like becoming inevitable, no matter how great market acquisition channels you have. And also the challenge is to cut down the physical touch with the customers. Because in traditional banking services, we used to have and access the credibility of the customer by providing the proof of income, maybe like bringing family members, some other borrowers. This need is like getting already like into the background area. And the main challenge for the fintechers is to not to request the paperwork and signatures and making all of this like traditional identification and assessment process into virtual environment. For that purposes, fintechers, of course, need, first of all, real-time analytics. Because if you do not possess a real-time data in order to gain insights into the present circumstances, you will be no longer like a doable and operating into effective manner, of course. Also, this real-time data must be integrated in risk analytics, because the risks are originating not only from customers, but like the companies itself that are in need of some cash and some financing. And of course, the challenge is to verify the credit worthiness of the customers through the data. And for that reason, fintechers need multiple integration with data providing sources. We all know who is in touch with machine learning systems, that if you are giving a wrong inputs to your machine learning systems, then of course, logically, the output is not logical and whole your business might be crashed within a couple of seconds. So it's utterly important to find the correct sources of your data, that your business processes will be constantly making analytics around that. And of course, we need to also emphasize the secure payments systems, also data governance systems, and credit scoring systems. For example, in Asian countries where I'm responsible for development, the biggest challenge I faced was the absence of the centralized credit scoring system. Mostly like banks are creating their own intra credit scoring systems and are not letting little fintech players to integrate with them and through API exchange those data. Of course, it's becoming like a headache for little players to get real-time insights about the customer's credit worthiness. And one of the biggest partners for P2P lending companies is credit rating agencies. And of course, on a governmental level, it must be like penetrated in order to have a wide range of coverage. And last and foremost, I would have outlined in challenges, it's a legal basis, because someone might think that I have a great fintech idea, I'm deploying state-of-the-art risk management systems, but of course, in regulatory environment, how to operate, that's another way of actually failing your business. Because smaller fintech companies are failing exactly at the stage of regulatory compliance, while the big financial institutions are having like the whole big teams to deal with those laws. And regulatory bodies are also sometimes even keeping pace with these changes in technologies. That results in actually operating many fintech startups into like gray area. So the good way out to start your fintech business is to share some of the burden with other fintech companies. And of course, you can strengthen your team to deal with those regulatory compliance issues with the bigger and already matured companies.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So you mentioning about this makes me remember an anecdote. So when I was early in the sector and I had no idea, and I was just trying to understand what FinTech was, my founder, she told me that FinTech is not the business of giving money. It's the business of getting money back. It's everybody, and can raise funds and probably become an NBFC or so, and on a global market similar entities. But the one who's actually able to collect that money, who's able to actually check the credit worthiness, as you mentioned, of the right people, to screen the right people who you should be disbursing to, all of that mechanisms, if put in place, that's one of the biggest success metrics that you can, or maybe biggest activation matrix that you would want to be put into a fintech startup. So I completely agree with that learning. And also from my own experience, I've seen that regulatory compliances, even in India, although we work in this age group of teenagers who are minors and they don't really have the access to a lot of fintech services, and anybody who's above the age of 18 would have. And there are certain other challenges. I mean, we get a lot of excitement from our customers, users, which are the teenagers. They're very excited about, getting an own debit card and stuff. But what really becomes a hassle here is the verification process that we have, right? In India, it's called the know your customer process. And that process is something where they don't want to go through. They want instant gratification. There's a product, I want it, I want to use it. But do I really want to go on it? And there's also this entire cloud of data security around things where, even the Gen Zs that are now coming up, the young population is aware. They know, oh my God, that these are secure, these are sensitive data, but they may not really know the backstory for it, which is another, hassle, regulatory hassle that has been coming up, in the fintech industry, given that it revolves so strongly around customer trust, probably more than any other industry that's out there, right? When we talk about profit industries and such. So those are some wonderful insights. And let's move to Chirutha and hear from her what challenges, because there are, I'm sure, a lot of challenges as insights she must have from micro merchants in India, which is a very diverse, very spread out and sprawling sector in the country. Chirutha?
Completely agree, Aditi. Yes, we do face a lot of challenges with the micro merchants. The behavior is completely different in each state you go. Matlab, each state has its own challenges. So basically, to start with, the kind of population in India, it's not organized like other countries. It's morely an unorganized segment. So that's how the whole concept of payment came into the picture, wherein, when we wanted to actually, how it all started, if I just give you basics. So we wanted to, long ago, we had a small content stuff, small packages of SMS contents, right? The mobile had just come into India. So we used to sell the SMS contents offline. So during that time, we realized that, there is no channel through which we could actually touch all mom and pop stores. It is just not organized. So that's how the whole concept of payment came into the existence. So from there on, we started building the network one after another with the services that they use regularly, so that you are in touch with them. So what you really need to make sure is, when you go with a particular product, the segment that we are reaching to, they need to use your service every day. It cannot just lie on a shelf or just not use that service. So that doesn't work. So that was the first learning that we actually had when we started our journey. From there on, we started giving out the basic services, banking services to them. Okay. And when we wanted to expand, there came the new challenges. Okay. Like Caroline mentioned, the countries have various, segmentations and everything. Similarly, in India itself, when we wanted to expand in, say, AP Telangana, what we realized is that it's completely different. You need to have localized content over there. You need to have your application in Telugu language for them to gain the trust that you are one of them. You need to have your customer support, which also has a local connection with them. They can talk Telugu. You have your distributor support, which gives them a connection to the whole system. So you need to have, it's like the top to bottom approach is what generally just people talk, but the other operational efforts, the service, everything has to be connected to, actually get inside that particular market. Okay. So you really need to understand the market very well, understand what is required in their market, what do they want, and then go for it. Other thing is, like, when we talk about even any campaigns that we do for, getting them hooked onto it, it again needs to be more of a localized stuff, like, and a very desi content is what, I would say, because, that's what the common people relate to, the merchants relate to. So we do have like some of the engaging activities with our merchants in terms of, like, so we have a service wherein they can create PAN cards for end consumer. Okay. So in that we had a contest, like, PAN card ka King Kong, a very localized scheme for the retailers so that they can relate to those kind of stuff. So I think whenever we try to build a particular product, or when you're going into the market, you need to cater to those merchants in a way that they can relate to you. Absolutely. Like, I cannot have a very fancy name for a merchant contest. Like assuming a cred like an app, okay, having a contest like, credit card ka King Kong. Some, people will not relate to it. But for merchants, the whole concept of PAN card ka King Kong, it was a hit.
Makes sense.
So this is all, you need to cater, you really need to understand your users first when you are building any product. Without that, to actually achieve the next step or to even go, it becomes a difficult. Like, it becomes very difficult to go.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Aditi, we'll take a couple of audience questions because there are a lot of people who have asked questions. So just a couple of points. So friends, we have a lot of knowledgeable people on the audience also. So probably in all the speakers also, in case if there is a question where you can answer in the chat. So in case if you're not able to take all the questions live. Tanay has asked a question for Kunal. Banks have huge sums of money in their deposits. How do you guys arrange money for disbursements of loans? Kunal.
Sure. So I think he asked the money question really, because lending is the business is all about intelligently getting your capital supply in place. And that pretty much changes the fabric of your economics if you don't get the capital supply right. Just to answer that question, Tanay, the way we solve this problem is through a combination of partnerships that we have with different balance sheet owners. So we work in partnership with banks, NBFCs. We have our own NBFC license, which allows us to raise our own debt money as well. So it's a combination of having our own money and having partnerships with other banks and NBFCs who have their balance sheets. And whenever we are partnering with them, it's a matter of coming up with a commercial structure wherein we share the revenue and the risk, so that the institutions who are providing the capital believe that their incentives are aligned with our incentives and they get the best return on their capital. So it's purely through commercial partnerships as well as our own money, such that the incentives of all parties are aligned both on risk and revenue.
Awesome. We'll take one more question, then Aditi, you then take the lead. Sai Kiran has asked a question to Caroline. Trust plays a major role, especially while dealing with the money of others. How did you manage to build trust among people when the company was very young and with very few testimonials? Yes, Caroline.
That's a great question. So yes, we would say that trust is probably the single biggest kind of commodity for us that we're trading in. And without trust, we don't have a business. And so we are both a FinTech business and also a psychology business. So by that, I mean that we care very, very deeply about why people want to do the things that they do. So our whole mission is about putting money back in the context of people's lives and helping them do the things in their lives that are most important to them. So things like buying a home or starting their own business or raising a family. And so we found that by solving for real life problems and building tools which are very empathetic. So we build with empathy. We don't assume that you have any knowledge. We don't assume that you have financial capability. We try to take out all of the cognitive load. We try to build in a way that you're never scared to input a number. You're never scared to press the next button. We give you immediate feedback on everything that you input, so you always know exactly where you are in the product journey. And we take away as much of the anxiety that people feel around money as we can. And by doing all of this, by building that into the products, that is what builds trust, because you are solving the specific problem that the user have. It's a very emotional problem. They're very motivated to do it. And then by taking them through a journey that feels good, that makes them feel that they have autonomy and control and they're getting closer to that goal, that is what builds the trust.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Probably will not be able to take all the questions, but I've shared the LinkedIn thread. So in case if you want to ask a question, all the speakers are tagged over here so they can respond to that. We have a hard stop at 3:55. So Aditi, last 10 minutes. Yes.
Okay, so we're going to be doing more. It wasn't really planned as a rapid fire, but I think we can actually do it in sorts of thing like that. I have a few questions for our panelists here from the points that they just mentioned over description. So I have this question for Anurag actually, since he mentioned a lot about ecosystem and how really you go about iterating and building feedback loops. So one thing which I have noticed so far in whatever little I have learned about FinTech is that there needs to be a strong ecosystemic support, whether it be in any country of the world and on a global level that you're doing, right? I mean, me thinking of a certain banking service maybe 25 years ago would not really have been very convenient or possible. People would be like, yeah, that's just probably some joke. But now it's a reality and you're like, oh, I wouldn't have been able to survive without that. So would love to hear from Anurag, what are his points and where does he see the ecosystem really advancing when it comes to FinTech? What are some of the realistic and probably even wild ideas to hear from him as to where he sees FinTech really going in the future, or even in the very, very near future, so to say? And also would love to hear if you can incorporate learnings and insights from this pandemic, like with the new normal coming in, what are some new advances we will see in the FinTech arena? Anurag?
Sorry. Thanks, Aditi. I think it's a very pertinent question for us. And I think when we started our journey on the FinTech side, the model that we have, did not exist in the market. So, the best option and the easiest option would have been to probably look at something that was already existing in the market, for which you had well-defined rules wherein, you can basically club yourself under the different umbrellas or the entities that the regulators define for you, and sort of be happy, sort of build a business around it and, try and move ahead. But I think we chose the road, not taken. We started with something which did not have any precedent in the market. And which is where, we have had our share of experiences. And, as you said, FinTech is a very, very, regulated space. And there are reasons why it is so. I mean, you're playing with money, right? And it is a very important commodity as far as the economy is concerned. So, all points to the regulators to keep it, very, very regulated. But having said that, it turned out to be a different journey for us because we wanted to do something different. And which is where I think, it took us some time to build that trust, amongst the stakeholders that we have, whether it is, the investors who are currently looking at buying invoices through our platform, or the vendors who are essentially, selling their invoices through our platform, or even the corporates. So in the beginning, we did have our own share of sort of disappointments and, rejections that came in from different corporates, because nobody had heard about the company. But over a period of time, we continuously iterated the same thing, the same process flow for all these stakeholders. And over a period of time, people realized that we mean business. Mm-hmm. And the same thing happened with the regulator as well. So we obviously have been in touch with the regulator around what we are doing and how we are sort of, doing our business on a day-to-day basis. So I think even if you are starting with something new, which does not have any precedent, even in the FinTech space, I think you should not be afraid to sort of go for it. I mean, the best option would be to sort of look at something which already exists and an entity where you have a set of laws already defined. But having said that, it is always a challenge to, probably look at something where you have to define your own set of rules, keeping in mind, the regulations that are there around you. Coming to your point around the pandemic, I think pandemic has sort of changed a lot of old time habits for the consumers as well as businesses. What used to look like a 10-year goal on the fintech side is looking as if we will achieve that in the next 1 or 2 years. Things like digital adoption, things like do it yourself kind of a model, right? So we had tough times to actually convince the vendors to actually go online and do a lot of things, on the platform, on the portal. But this pandemic has actually forced everybody to come online. In the beginning, everybody just thought that, okay, probably it might just be a month or two and we'll be back, to our office or business or wherever. But they were actually forced to adopt, different facets of the fintech space, whether it is to do with payments, whether it is to do with digital lending, whether it is to do with authenticating yourself, doing your KYC and so on and so forth. So now people are sort of opening up to an idea of, buying an insurance online, right? Buying, getting credit online, as Kunal also suggested, right? That when you look at, these apps which are available, on different channels, wherein you can actually input your details and instantly you can get credit exposure from them. So all these are opening up new avenues for more fintechs to sort of come and disrupt the whole space. Talking about the infrastructure per se, I would say that there have been a lot of developments, especially on the fintech side. It's worth mentioning about UPI and some of the other, like things like India Stack, which have changed the face of the game. And fintech would be very, very different from where we are as of today in the next couple of years. So I think the pandemic has expedited a lot of things, and we are now moving at a faster pace towards achieving a goal of a completely digital online application or a credit application, or for that matter accessing credit from the financial institutions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's really something there. I mean, the entire pandemic and everything that came as a consequence of that has really given a very strong foothold to the tech in fintech, right? I mean, the adoptions, the new technologies that we weren't really fathoming would come up in the next few years, as you rightly mentioned, is there right at our doorstep, and that's wonderful. And I see a lot of amazing new things to come up in the very near future. And I think there's still a lot of global linking that has to happen when it comes to fintech, right? I mean, when we talk of fintech, there are lots of regulations which are country specific right now. There are linkings which are country specific. But when you look at the global ecosystem, when the e-commerce is expanded and gone global, when then all of these services platform are really global, whether it's from OTT or other platforms, I think fintech is going to follow suit next and become that global linking platform. So there are lots of opportunities is something, as a sub part of that particular area where I see, and that would be a very, very interesting space to, see and watch out for. Artificial intelligence being another one, as you rightly mentioned, technology breeds technology. Now that we have a particular technology to do something, there are so many avenues for new things to come up and actually aid and make those processes even simpler. Nobody probably would have imagined a TAT of even minutes for disbursal of money to happen. But very evident from all the startups and panelists and founders that we have here, that they have made that, unbelievable thought now a reality. So I think it's a very exciting space that we're looking at, and lots of work to be done. Since we have a hard stop at 3:55, we won't be taking any more new questions, but I will just be advising everybody here who's attending the session to continue asking questions to all the panelists. I would love to answer some of the answers as well. on the chat, on the LinkedIn thread that we have here. The next session that we have is the SaaS session, which starts, and the Jatin has posted link for that. So would request everybody interested in that one as well to join us there. And lovely having you.
Aditi, I'll just. Yeah. We have 2 minutes. So typically, when we do all these sessions, we end with the idea is to end on a high. So one of the things we ask our panelists is, think of this as a university class, and you are invited as a convocation, and you are given like 1-line answer for your convocation speech. So one by one, all the panelists will share their one, and when the last panelist ends their speech, we will end this call, and we'll move on to the another call. So we will start with Kunal. Your 1-line message for the FinTech founders as your convocation speech of this session.
I think being a backbencher in class, I was not expected to be called first. But 1-line message. Well, I think business is tough, but focus on fundamentals and make sure I have fun along the way. So that's all I'd say.
Awesome. Anurag.
I think the biggest thing in any idea that you sort of come across for starting a startup is to start the action on ground, right? I think a lot of people just think about a lot of ideas which never see the light of the day. You just go ahead, start executing, and the ecosystem will teach you everything.
Awesome. Ketevan.
Build up data-driven processes and keep in mind to make things easier for your customer.
Awesome. Chirutha.
I would say that, know your customer, whom you are selling or whom you are building product very much, because that will help you grow your, that will help you scale. Because if there's a mismatch, you'll not be able to grow.
Awesome. And first of all, thank you so much, Aditi, and all the panelists and Varma Foundation team. Caroline, once you end this and once you end your sentence, I'll immediately close the call.
Hey, great.
Yes,
thanks, everyone. So mine is, don't just know your customer, co-create your products with your customer. Get them that involved with your product so that they drive it, they become your evangelists, and they will build your company for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone.